People have been studying the scriptures since before they were written. Think about it. During the first decades after Jesus' resurrection, the apostles reflected on their time with him and how to proclaim him to all the nations. Jesus would have grown up with stories of conquest and oppression. These stories recounted the many waves of foreign invasion that sought to subjugate the Jewish people. The Roman occupation of Israel in 63 BCE was the last in a long line of invasions, beginning with the Babylonians in 539 BCE. Here's something from John 5, 1-15. Soon another feast came around and Jesus was back in Jerusalem. Near the sheep gate in Jerusalem there was a pool, in Hebrew called Bethesda, with 5 porches. Hundreds of sick people, blind, crippled, paralyzed, were in these porches. One man had been an invalid there for 38 years. When Jesus saw him stretched out by the pool and knew how long he had been there, he said, "Do you want to get well?" The sick man said, "Sir, when the water is stirred, I don't have anybody to put me in the pool. By the time I get there, somebody else is already in." Jesus said, "Get up, take your bedroll, start walking." The man was healed on the spot. He picked up his bedroll and walked off. That day happened to be the Sabbath. The Jews stopped the healed man and said, "It's the Sabbath. You can't carry your bedroll around. It's against the rules." But he told them, "The man who made me well told me to." He said, "Take your bedroll and start walking." They asked, "Who gave you the order to take it up and start walking?" But the healed man didn't know, for Jesus had slipped away into the crowd. A little later Jesus found him in the temple and said, "You look wonderful. You're well. Don't return to a sinning life or something worse might happen." This gospel passage about Jesus healing the paralytic at Bethesda was cast into doubt because in 17th and 18th century Europe a different approach developed. There was no evidence that this pool having 5 porches ever existed. All this changed in the 19th century when German archaeologist Konrad Schick discovered the remains of just such a pool. In the 1960s further excavations unearthed an adjacent Roman temple beneath the ruins of a Crusader-era church and an even older Byzantine sanctuary. Scholars now believe that the pool and the adjoining temple were established by the Roman garrison in honor of Asclepios, their god of medicine and health. Saint Justin the philosopher, writing in the early 2nd century, noted that the devil brings forward Asclepios as the raiser of the dead and healer of all diseases. Asclepios was one of the more popular gods of the Greco-Roman pantheon. Over 400 such shrines were reportedly functioning throughout the empire. Everyone, after all, wants good health and well-being, which were Asclepios' specialty. During the Roman occupation of Jerusalem, a number of Roman structures were built in and around the city, including an arena, baths and a theater. If the pool at Bethesda was a Roman shrine to a pagan god, was the paralytic that Jesus cured a pagan or a Jew? The Gospel passage does not say. It only says that a great number of sick people were there. A passage in the Babylonian Talmud mentions that people were cured after visiting the shrine of an idol. The sick probably wouldn't care who healed them if there was a chance that they actually could be cured. Since the paralytic, once cured, was reproached by Jews for carrying his bed on a Sabbath, it is safe to assume that the man was himself a Jew. The passage ends with the following: "Afterward Jesus found him in the temple, and said to him, 'See, you have been made well. Sin no more, lest a worse thing come upon you.' The man departed and told the Jews that it was Jesus who had made him well." If the man was not a Jew, that exchange would not have taken place. Some commentators have suggested that, if the pool was attached to a pagan shrine, Jesus would not have gone there. Others have countered that he who ate with publicans and sinners would not hesitate to go among the people wherever and whoever they were. Now a couple of points to show Jesus didn't need the pool of water or the approval of the Jewish authority to go about his work. In verse 5 a certain man was there, which had an infirmity 38 years. Here is a man in this condition for 38 years. Why not just say 40? Why not just report the event as a long time, instead of being specific? Because numbers in Scripture have meaning. Separately, the number 30 represents redemption, and the number 8 new beginnings. 38 years. The Jews knew this man was in a condition for a long time, yet instead of rejoicing, they are more concerned about their own traditions. They love the appearance of law, more than the law itself. Here is a man whose healing can only be attributed to the true God, there is no other answer. Yet what is their concern? Rejoicing and giving God the glory? No, they were placing the Sabbath above the worship of God. We get a glimpse of Jesus in service on the day most of us meet to worship and find rest. He travels among us, through the multitude to help the needy. We can see a deep meaning in all of this. John is contrasting the lottery-like application of the demon's healing power at Asclepios pool with the loving, personal encounter which the paralytic had with Jesus, the true physician of souls and bodies. The regenerative power of Jesus is open to all who seek union with him. And Jesus doesn't need tricks or props, specific times or even an audience. Now, here's the irony in this. A man, healed of a lifelong infirmity, and on the very same day he's released from his bonds, and is allowed to walk, run, move about without pain or difficulty, he spends little time in rejoicing. He's more concerned about pleasing the Jews. He turns against Jesus and reports him by name, as if he had committed some great crime. Isn't that our normal gratitude for blessings as well? Don't we immediately turn back to the flesh instead of thanking God?